John Franklin's expedition. In 1845, two British ships sailed into the Arctic and vanished. Their names were HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. On board were 129 men, led by Sir John Franklin. Their mission was to find the legendary Northwest Passage, a sea route through the Canadian Arctic that could connect Europe and Asia. But none of them ever came home. For years, search parties found only scattered clues, abandoned equipment, human remains, and a few written messages. One note revealed that the ships had become trapped in ice and that Franklin had died in 1847. The surviving crew abandoned the ships and tried to walk south across the frozen landscape. Modern research revealed the horrifying conditions they faced. Many men suffered from scurvy, caused by a lack of vitamin C. Others may have been affected by lead poisoning, possibly linked to the food cans and other sources on the ships. But the most disturbing evidence came from human bones. Cut marks found on some remains suggest that, near the end, the starving survivors may have turned to cannibalism. For more than 160 years, the ships themselves were missing. Then, in 2014, Parks Canada discovered the wreck of HMS Erebus. 2 years later, in 2016, they found HMS Terror, remarkably well preserved beneath the Arctic waters. The Franklin expedition remains one of the greatest maritime mysteries in history. Ghost ship Carroll A. Deering. January 31, 1921. A massive 5-masted schooner is spotted aground off Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Her sails were unfurled, the lifeboats were gone, and the entire crew had vanished without a trace. The Carroll A. Deering was a commercial cargo schooner returning from Rio de Janeiro after delivering coal. On her way home, she stopped in Barbados, the last place her crew was ever seen alive. Days later, she was sighted near the Cape Lookout lightship. Something was already very wrong. When the Coast Guard finally boarded the Deering, they found a ghost ship. Food was being prepared in the galley, as if the crew had vanished mid-meal. Personal belongings, navigation equipment, and the ship's logbook, all missing. The steering gear was destroyed. 11 men simply gone. The case exploded into one of the largest maritime investigations in U.S. history. The FBI, the Navy, the Coast Guard, and even the State Department got involved. A bottle washed ashore with a message about pirates, later proven a hoax. The official inquiry closed in 1922 with no answers. Today, the Carroll A. Deering remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle. Flight 19. On December 5, 1945, 14 American airmen took off on a routine training flight and vanished into thin air. This is the case that gave birth to the Bermuda Triangle legend. At 2:10 p.m., 5 Navy TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, known as Flight 19, left Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Their mission was to conduct navigation exercises over the Atlantic Ocean. Leading them was Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a combat veteran with thousands of flight hours. But 2 hours later, something terrible happened. Taylor panicked and reported over the radio that both compasses had failed and he couldn't find Fort Lauderdale. The signal grew fainter and fainter. Then, silence. A PBM Mariner rescue plane with 13 men launched into the night to find them. 23 minutes later, a passing ship reported seeing a fireball over the ocean. The Mariner was gone too. In one evening, 27 men disappeared. Despite the largest search in naval history, not a single piece of wreckage from Flight 19 was ever recovered. The Navy's official 1946 report first blamed pilot error. But after protests from Taylor's family, the cause was officially changed to reasons unknown. Flight 19 remains one of aviation's greatest mysteries. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann. On the night of May 3, 2007, a 3-year-old girl vanished from her bed. The McCann family was on holiday in Praia da Luz, a quiet resort town in Portugal's Algarve region. Madeleine, just days away from her 4th birthday, was sleeping in apartment 5A of the Ocean Club with her younger twin siblings. Her parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, were dining with friends at a tapas restaurant just 55 meters away, checking on the children regularly. Around 10 p.m., Kate returned to the apartment but couldn't find Madeleine. The case exploded into one of the most reported missing child investigations in history. Portuguese police initially led the search, but in 2011, London's Metropolitan Police launched Operation Grange, a dedicated review at the request of the British Prime Minister. Scotland Yard reviewed over 40,000 documents, identified hundreds of persons of interest, and reduced them to key suspects. In 2020, German prosecutors named Christian Bruckner, a convicted sex offender who was living near Praia da Luz at the time, as their prime suspect. Operation Grange remains active. As of 2024, the UK Home Office continues to fund the investigation, which has cost over £13 million. Bruckner has not been charged in connection with Madeleine's disappearance and denies any involvement. Madeleine would be over 21 years old today. Her family has never stopped searching. The Ourang Medan mystery. All officers are dead. I am dying. That was the final message from a ghost ship in 1947. What happened next has haunted maritime history for over 70 years. In June 1947, ships passing through the Strait of Malacca picked up a distress signal. The Dutch cargo ship SS Ourang Medan was sending an SOS signal unlike any other. The message ended with a single terrifying phrase, "I am dying." And then, there was silence. An American ship, the Silver Star, raced to the coordinates and found the Ourang Medan drifting, completely intact. But when rescuers boarded, they froze in horror. The entire crew was dead. Their bodies were sprawled across the decks, faces twisted in terror, eyes wide open. Even the ship's dog was found snarling, frozen in death. There were no wounds, no signs of struggle. Before the rescuers could tow the vessel, smoke began rising from below deck. They cut the lines, and moments later, the Ourang Medan exploded and sank to the bottom of the sea. The mystery of K-129. In March 1968, a Soviet submarine vanished in the Pacific Ocean. What happened next became one of the most expensive and secretive operations in CIA history. K-129, a Soviet Golf II-class ballistic missile submarine. On February 24, 1968, she left her base in Kamchatka on a routine patrol. She carried 98 crew members, 3 nuclear ballistic missiles, and torpedoes with nuclear warheads. When K-129 missed her scheduled radio check-ins, the Soviet Navy launched a massive search across the Pacific. They found nothing. Officially, the cause of her sinking remains unknown to this day. But the U.S. Navy did find her. Using underwater acoustic sensors, American intelligence pinpointed K-129's wreck about 1,500 miles northwest of Hawaii, resting nearly 5,000 meters deep on the ocean floor. For the CIA, this was a goldmine, a Soviet sub with nuclear missiles and codebooks, sitting in international waters. They had to recover it. The mission was called Project Azorian, often mistakenly called Project Jennifer by the press. Billionaire Howard Hughes provided cover by claiming his ship, the Glomar Explorer, was mining manganese from the seabed. In reality, in 1974, this ship lowered a giant mechanical claw nearly 3 miles down to grab the submarine. According to declassified CIA documents released in 2010, part of K-129 was recovered, but the section containing the missiles broke off and fell back into the abyss. Exactly what the CIA managed to extract remains classified. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. In February 1959, 9 experienced hikers walked into the Ural Mountains and never came back alive. What happened that night still haunts Russia 60 years later. Led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, the group of students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out on a ski expedition to Otorten Mountain. They were skilled, prepared, and well-equipped. On February 1st, they set up camp on the slope of Kholat Syakhl, a name that translates to Dead Mountain. That night, something forced them to flee. When rescuers arrived weeks later, they found the tent, slashed open from the inside. Footprints showed the hikers had run barefoot into -30 degrees Celsius. Their bodies were scattered across the mountainside. Some died of hypothermia, but others had crushed ribs, a fractured skull, and one was missing her tongue and eyes. For decades, theories ran wild. Secret weapons tests, Yeti attacks, even UFOs. In 2020, Russia's prosecutor general officially closed the case, concluding a small avalanche forced them out, and disorientation in the dark did the rest. But many, including the families and author Donnie Eichar in his book Dead Mountain, still aren't convinced. Eichar proposes a rare phenomenon called infrasound, generated by wind, that can trigger panic and terror. The Amber Room, the lost eighth wonder of the world. One of the greatest treasures ever created, has vanished without a trace, and has been missing for over 80 years. This is the story of the Amber Room, the legendary eighth wonder of the world. In 1716, the King of Prussia, Frederick William I, presented Tsar Peter the Great with a diplomatic gift. an entire room covered in panels of carved Baltic amber, gold leaf, and mirrors, weighing over 6 tons and containing more than 450 kilograms of amber. It was installed in the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg, where it dazzled visitors for over 2 centuries. Then came World War II. In 1941, Nazi soldiers stormed Tsarskoye Selo. Soviet curators tried to hide the panels behind wallpaper, but the Germans found them within 36 hours. They dismantled the room in just over a day and shipped it to Königsberg Castle in what is now Kaliningrad. There, it was displayed publicly until 1944. In August 1944, Allied bombs hit Königsberg. By April 1945, the Red Army captured the city, but the Amber Room was gone. According to archives from the Königsberg Museum and decades of investigations by Der Spiegel, the panels may have been crated and hidden in mines, sunk on a ship, or destroyed in the fire. No one knows. Treasure hunters are still combing through bunkers throughout Germany and Poland. In 2003, a fully reconstructed version of the room was unveiled in Russia. The original has yet to be found. The Lost Army of Cambyses II, a 2,500-year-old mystery. In 524 BC, 50,000 soldiers marched into the Egyptian desert and were never seen again. This is the story of the Lost Army of Cambyses II. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, in his work The Histories, Book 3, the Persian king Cambyses II had just conquered Egypt. But one oracle defied him, the oracle of Amun at the Siwa oasis. Furious, Cambyses dispatched an army of 50,000 men to destroy the temple and silence the priests. They set out from Thebes, crossing hundreds of kilometers of open desert. Herodotus writes that they reached the oasis of El Karga and then vanished. According to Herodotus, while the soldiers were eating their midday meal, a massive sandstorm swept in from the south. A wall of sand swallowed the entire army. Not a single man survived. 50,000 soldiers gone. In 2009, Italian archaeologists Angelo and Alfredo Castigliani announced a stunning find. After 25 years of research in Egypt's western desert, they reported discovering bronze weapons, silver bracelets, human bones, and skulls, possibly the remains of Cambyses' lost army. The lost civilization of the Indus Valley. Over 4,000 years ago, one of the world's greatest civilizations thrived along the Indus River. It built massive cities, invented advanced plumbing, and then vanished. This is the mystery of the Indus Valley civilization. Flourishing between roughly 2600 and 1900 BCE, the Indus Valley civilization stretched across what is now Pakistan and northwest India. Its 2 greatest cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, were marvels of engineering. Streets were laid out in perfect grids. Homes had private bathrooms connected to the world's earliest known sewage and drainage systems, centuries ahead of their time. They even had standardized weights, multi-story buildings, and a mysterious script that, to this day, no one has fully deciphered. Then, around 1900 BCE, everything changed. Cities were abandoned, trade collapsed, an entire civilization quietly disappeared. A 2012 study published in PNAS pointed to a dramatic shift in climate. The monsoons weakened. Rivers like the Ghaggar Hakra began to dry up. Without reliable water, agriculture failed, and the great cities could no longer sustain their populations.